Hello everyone, welcome to SwiftXR API tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be guiding you through creating HTTP requests to the SwiftXR API server for updating, publishing, and also creating 3D content using the API. We'll also run through a demo application, just a mini application that shows how to use the API in your custom project in JavaScript. So to get started, go to api.swiftxr.io /v1. Here you have access to the API link and also how to use the API, also with the routes that the API works with. To use the API, all routes are protected with an API key, so you need to generate an API key. To generate the API key, you go to swiftxr.io/hub settings profile, which can be found if you go to user settings on the SwiftXR hub. Then you want to generate an API key. So let's create that. So I'm going to call this test API key. I'm going to create and view it, and I'm also going to copy the key. So once I'm done copying the key, it's now time to use the API. So I'll start by creating a post request to site. So the way the API works is we have the v1/site. With the v1/site, it requires you to pass the name of your site, which is also going to use to generate the URL and also the configuration parameter for that particular site you want to create. Once you are done creating the site, it's going to return back an object, which is going to have the site ID that you are then going to use for the v1 site deploy, where you pass the site ID to deploy it. So and we're going to use Insomnia, and for this we're going to use an HTTP request. We're also going to use a post request. So we need to set our header, and for the header we need to make sure it is authorization. We pass the bearer value, and then we also pass our API key there. Then for the body, we need to ensure that it's a JSON body for what we need, and the route is v1/site. So we're going to copy this link and go back here. So we have /v1/site. Let's copy the initial body that we have, which is this, and let's put this here. So the site name refers to the name of the project that you want to create. The site name is also what will be used to generate the SwiftXR URL, which means whatever you have in your site name would have a .swiftxr.app, which is going to be the app name. So for this, let's call it sample API test. So what we expect that's going to be the output as the URL is going to be sample API test.swiftxr.app. That's going to be where it's going to be accessible. For our type, we have model. So our type at the moment, we currently have two types. We have the model type. If you go take a look at the schema, we have the model type, and then we also have the artwork type. The model type is simply you have a 3D model and you want to publish it, while the artwork type is saying you have a 2D image that you want to convert to a 3D artwork. We're going to see how that works. So for now, we're going to pick a model. The logo URL can be left blank. That is if you want to have a link, like your logo shown on the page. If not, we can leave it blank. We can also add this other parameter that we have, which is either we want to compress the model and the level of the compression, if you want to compress the image. Again, these are all just compression settings to enable that the model is lightweight and can load faster on the user browser. For this project, we can leave AR true, but I'm just going to make it false because we don't need AR for this test. So one that you want to set up is to definitely set up the content type as application.json, which it has been set automatically, but you need to ensure that this is set as JSON, so it knows that the body is a JSON body. So we're going to send this response. When we send it, you can see it works. We then have a site ID, we have the site name, and then of course you have the site URL. If you try to go to the site URL, it's not going to go because we've not yet deployed it yet. But what we've done at the moment is we've created like a placeholder to hold our site. So we're saying we've created our site with this particular configuration, and this is the link that we want to use, and the site name. It also includes all the config that we've created already. You can always update this information by using the update route that we have at the API, which is this patch. So let's assume that, but before we update it, let's just make a quick deploy first. So in order to now add a particular 3D model to this app that has been deployed, we go to, it's also create a post request. So let's create a post request here. Let's make it a post. Let's copy this link. For the link is site is deploy, and then we need to pass the site ID. So the site ID is what we've generated from here, and we then put the site ID here. Now I put in site ID here. For this one, the response is going to be a multi-part from body. If you take a look at what we have from deploy, is it just requires the site ID as the parameter, as the query parameter, and then the body is a form that takes a binary, which is going to be a form request. The reason why we made a form request is so that you can deploy your project easily without having to combine JSON requests with also with form requests. So you use your normal sites, you use your normal, oh sorry, mistake. So this apparently should be, this is where this deploy should be. This should go back to being a JSON request. With our, we're going to pass our body there, right? So this is where we actually want to deploy it. So this should be the form, multi-part form itself. The name should be deploy. If we look at what we have here, which is the name of the form that we're going to send. So this should be deploy, and then for the value, we are going to make it a file because we actually want to create a file. But before then, we need to set our header. We're also going to add our authorization. So it's read our token authorization, and I'm just going to copy what we have here and put that there. So I'm going to select the file that we want to upload, and I'm just going to go to test model, and we go to products, robotic arm animation. That's what we want to upload. And once we are done, we press then send. Now once it's done uploading, as you can see, it's going to return back, yeah, it has successfully deployed the site. So immediately what it has done is it simply just deployed this 3D model into that site that we created initially from here. And it's going to also return the config parameter that we set initially while creating the site, also with the view counts and all we need. And now if you go back to this URL that we have initially and we refresh it, we should see the robotic arm loaded on it. And yes, we can see the robotic arm that we deployed back in the project. And that is majorly how we use the API. So we first use the, I'm just going to copy this config back because that's pretty much what we did. Use in that place. Sorry, but I just copy what we have initially from here. Let's put it back. And for the site name, this is our site name. And this, sorry, this was our site name, then this was blank, and this was false. So I mean, we make a push request first to create like a placeholder just to hold the site. We're just configuring what the site should look like, the type we want, and then once we are done, it's going to return us a project ID. You then make a push request to the deploys route with the project ID as a query, and then you then pass a form with a deploy with a field name of deploy and also with the robotic arm file, and that's then going to publish it. So let's assume that we want to update this project. For example, we don't want this particular 3D model. Maybe we want to use like the artwork instead, but and also want to change the name. So to do this, what we need to do is just to make a request to the update route, which is to the patch, which is the site, and then with the same ID, we can change the site name from API test to what we want, and also we can also change the type from model to artwork. So in order to do that, I'm just going to duplicate this, and we're going to switch it to a patch request. We need the ID, and we're going to put the ID here. And then now let's just call it API test v2 so we can see the difference. And then of course let's change this also to like an artwork, and we are then going to send this. Like I see, once we send it already, you can see it's now changed to sample API test v2 using the patch. And you see, when we go back to this initial one deployed with the sample API test and you've tried to refresh it, it's not going to go because it cannot find this project again, and because it doesn't exist. So, but if I change this now and I add the -v2 for the new name we added, and we go for it, you can see now it works and it loads the robotic arm that we have on the v2 link. And if for whatever reason we need to now update the stuff, so you can remember, like, even though we've changed the type to an artwork, we need to redeploy our projects in order to update the model that has been shown. This just update like naming system and all those stuff, naming and like the configuration itself. But if you want to like actually like change the file inside it, you need to use the deploy route to push the file that you want to update. Now, because of we've changed this, we've changed our configuration already to an artwork. If you try to deploy a 3D model to it, it's going to return an error to us, letting us know that we've chosen a type of artwork. An artwork requires like an image as compared to a model that requires a 3D model. But let's see and see the error is going to throw back. And you can see when we try to deploy this, it shows it's not an error, but then letting us know that as long as the project with this particular site ID, which is what we have here, as a type of an with a patch, as long as the project we have here has with an ID has the type of an artwork, in order for us to deploy it, we need to also pass a corresponding image. So let's just change this particular model and use an image now. Let's just upload this artwork. So what SwiftXR does is it is going to take an image and convert it to like a 3D artwork on demand using the type of artwork. So if we send this now, it has gone, it has updated already, and you can see our viewcat is 2 because we've viewed the project twice already. And if we go back and refresh this link, now we're expecting like an artwork should show instead. I can see now we can see the artwork showing in demand. So that's majorly like how we use the API. Use the site, the post and the patch for the site to update the configuration. You use the post itself to the post deploy to push the file. And if you actually want to delete the site, you can always use the delete with the ID. So let's try deleting this project that we've created at the moment. So if we just duplicate the post request, let's say duplicate the patch request. That will be much easier. And let's switch it to like a delete. You see the same route just with this ID and doesn't need any stuff in the body. And we send this. And this is going to once I delete the site. And we're also going to return some other project that you already have already, just so you can, in case you want to update your database with some information. And if we go back to this project and try to refresh now, you see it's no longer available because we deleted it already. If for whatever reason you want to dynamically get all the projects that you have in SwiftXR, you can just use the get site list, and that's going to return all the projects that you have on SwiftXR. So let's just also duplicate this tab, and let's switch this to a get request, then site /list, and if we send this, is going to return like literally all the projects you have created already on SwiftXR with all the links in case you are creating like in an app that require to to update projects dynamically. So this is majorly like how the API works, with the list, with the gets, with the post, and you can just like make it, you can see how that works. So, but what we want to do now is to now take it a step further and to actually like have a simple site, so what I've done now is I've just done I've done a mini I've done a mini website where someone can choose a file from their system and then publish it. And once it publishes it, it simply takes this project to SwiftXR, for example. Like it takes the project to this, it sends it to the API of SwiftXR and then publish and then return the link, and you can view the link from here. So just can just show you can use in JavaScript. So what I've done in the moment is have like an index.html page that's links to the main JS. I just simply have like a simple form that has like an input and also like a button of submit. But I think let's just actually add like an input of text for us to pick the for us to pick the name of the site. So let's call it name and let's call it sites. Let's call it site name actually. Site name. So yep. So if we go back now and refresh this, we can actually type our site name here and upload the file that publish and just see the link here. So let's see how do we now construct it in the JS. So what I've done is I just have like an event list now on the window to load, just window that everything's loaded properly. We then query selector to get the particular form ID based on the ID of the form here. And then when the form button is pressed, that's on the summit of the form, we just have like an event or prevent default. This ensures that the form does not reload the pages. We then get a form data, and this allows us get literally just these two data that we currently have in the form. So upload file gets us the deploy information that we want. This is the file that's best uploaded, and of course let's also get the site name. Form.gets, what did you call it, site name? Yeah, so form.get site name. So this is going to give us the name of the site that the person have declared. So let's now construct our API. So the API is going to be a two-stage process. We're going to first have to set the site configuration, and then we then have a next stage where we now actually upload the 3D model to the site. So we're going to use the inbuilt fetch API in JavaScript. So let's do a fetch request. So fetch, and we pass our URL, and for us here is actually the HTTPS API. I'm just going to copy from here we have. So let's go to the post that we have for creating a new site, and we go back to our JavaScript, and then let's put here. So this is the route to actually create a new site. Then we have a question mark where we then pass our configuration I want. So for method, this is going to be a post request, and then for the headers, ideally we want to add the authorization. So we have the authorization, and then we have the bearer, and then let's also just copy the API key. I'm also going to delete the API key after this call, so you have to generate your own API key to make it work. So let's put the API key here. Then finally, we also want to add the content type, which is also important to let the system know, like, this is the kind of content you should be expecting. Content type and application.json. Yep, so we have this, and this is what we just need. And now we just need to just also add the body to it, And for the body, we'll need to stringify it. So JSON.stringify, and we pass our body here. So for this, we can easily just go to Insomnia and what we've done before and just copy this particular content that we have, because that's what we need. So by doing this, I'm going to paste this guy here. So this is what we need. Clear this guy. Yep, so we have the site name. So for the site name, what we want to actually is we actually want to use the site name that we're getting from here, from the form data of the site name. So it's we're going to pass dynamically to it. Yeah. And then for the config, we want a model, we don't want any logo, we want to compress it, and of course we want AR for this one. And so once this is done, right, we can then have a then request where we can then JSON it out. Then we can also await it, and this is actually gonna be our final data. So let me just call it data. Let's call it our site config. Let's just call it response. Let's call it response. Res, and it works. And then let's just log our res from here. So ideally, right, we expect our res coming back to us should have a .site and also a .site ID, and that's what we need. So once we've gotten that, we know that what we need is our site ID. So we know our constant of our site ID is going to be a res.sites.site ID. Majorly getting that from here, so we know that we're gonna have the fourth JSON, and we're gonna have the site object and also the site ID under it. And by doing that, we have our site ID. So I'm just also going to just log our site ID so we can see the process. So just say log gotten site ID. Yeah. So with this now, we can now make another fetch request to actually push, upload the file. And for that, what we just need is to just copy this and put this here, right? And now we're just gonna change the routes. Instead of using the site, we're gonna use this route. That's what we need. Then we go back here and we have this, but just that now the site ID is gonna be getting dynamically, and just gonna add plus the site ID we're getting from it. Just gonna add it to the routes. It's also a posts. We have our bearer, we have a content type as obviously not of JSON. It's going to be a multi-path form data. We have this. Then for this, we don't need anything. What we just need from it actually is just the form data. That's what we need to pass, because our form data already has a parameter of deploy inside it. That's what we need. So with that in mind, we can take out, we don't need to stringify it, or we can actually construct a new form data just for it. So let's just do that. Let me just call it let's call it constant deploy form data is equals to new form data, right? And then we then do deploy form data dot append. What we want to actually append is the name is deploy, and then we actually want to just pass the upload file we have by the side. You can also add a file name. That's completely optional. So do we actually want to pass this as the body? Yeah. The response is also going to be a JSON, so we're going to response it back. And for just that, when the response for the upload is coming, we're going to have a site, and we're going to have a site URL, and it's actually what we need. So I'm just going to consider log the URLs, but what we need is the site URL here and the site URL that we got in. So we got in site URL. So this is the final form that we want to share it, or maybe dynamically append it to your project. So let's try this out and see if this works. Let's call it API tests. Let's call it API test v3. Let's select the file that we want. Let's pick from SwiftXR. Let's pick test model. Let's pick product animation image of it. Not which one image of it. That, and then let's publish the model and see the response we get. Okay, so after you can see the first one run successfully, we got the site objects, right, which is coming from this particular response we're having here, which is this one. It came back successfully, which is good. We're able to make our push requests, but then we have this error saying unaffectable file field name needs to be deployed, and majorly is saying that for whatever reason we are not appending we're not passing our form data correctly to it, and it's not saying the deploy form. So let's just check that. Okay, so apparently the error always comes from your header when setting your header of content type multi-platform. So when using the fetch request, you actually don't need to set the header, as the system is going to automatically compute it when making the request. And also this needs to be site URL, if you can get it. So let's try it now. But before then, let's just make sure that we delete what we have. So I'm just going to go back to the hub. I'm going to look for the project that we've published already, which is coming from here. So you should see what we published. I'm just gonna then delete the project, and also gonna delete this one. So now let's go back and try it again. So let's call it API test v3. Let's choose the file that we want, and let's then publish it. See how that goes. So we've gotten our site config parameter, which is good. So now it is uploading it, and yep, and that went. I can see we have 2 credit left in my account, and everything came back well. And I have this link, and I can open that link, and that should open the robotic arm. All done via JavaScript. So if for whatever reason we actually are looking at maybe actually appending maybe the stuff inside like an iframe here, that's also something that can be done, or maybe you want to store in a database, or you want to like render it dynamically for different type of user. But this just show you how you can dynamically retrieve file from user and also send it to the database. And I mean, retrieve the URL and use it in your project in one way or the other that you want to use that. So yeah, thank you, and I can't wait to see what you build out with the API. But before we go, let's just try appending a v4 in an iframe on the page, so we can see how that happens dynamically. So in order to do that, we're going to go back to our index.html page, and I'm just going to add an iframe here. The iframe is not going to have any SRC, but let's just give it a ID, or let's call it tests embed, so we can see it. And then for this, we could as well also style it. So give it like a style, like a width of, let's say, 500 pixel, and like an height of 500 pixel. So if we go back to our page, you should actually be able to see the iframe. Perfect, this is the iframe. Yeah, this is iframe. You can see it is here, so it's actually under here. So good. So what we want to do now is, when once we publish a v4, we actually want to like pass the URL and show it here dynamically. So let's do that. So first thing we need to do is to get a reference to the iframe. So let's just call it like iframe, and we need the ID is the test embed. Let's put the test embed here, and with this, once you are done here, what we just need to do is to let the iframe src, so iframe.src is equals to the site URL, and that should pass it to the to the URL. So yeah, let's see how this looks. Let's see how this works. So let's give it an API test v4. Let's choose the file that we want, and let's publish it through the model. So we start, we've especially prepared the site with the site config, we've gotten the site ID that we need to make our deploy, and at the moment we're going to be deploying it, and for some reason it did not go. Let's see what's going on. It's actually going here, so let's see what reason is it saying it cannot, it's not going here. iframe. So let's see the link actually passing to the iframe. Yeah, it should actually go. I guess it's just a little bit of delay that is affecting it. But if you try to use the link directly from here, let's see how that looks like from here, from the SRC, and we then refresh that. Yes, yeah, that works. So there's always like a delay before like the deploy actually goes live. A little bit of delay. So maybe what we could do for a v5 is maybe just have like a little bit of a set timeout here. This is like set like a timeout with like a, let me say 1 second, actually like a 2 second, just so we have more time in our hand, and then we then set the SRC there. So let's try this process now for a different model actually. Let's go for a v5, and let's choose a different file. Let's choose the CNC list that we have here, and let's publish this model. So we actually expect that once we are done publishing, it has gone to stage 1. We expect that this should actually be updated to the CNC list in real time. Okay, so it also got same error. That's right. Let's see. Yeah, so oftentimes, it does take a while for the site to be refreshed there. So what you can just do is just to take the delay to like 5 seconds. That should be enough for the DNS to have propagated, and the project should be live. So let's just try it now again for the v5. So let's pick the same CNC lates and let's run it again. So probably the 3D model, and you see we get the site ID going good. We site ID to run the project. We've gotten the URL, wait for like 5 seconds, and yeah, and then that then goes and of course then updates the iframe, and now we have the CNC bit updated in real time. So this just shows just a really basic use of how to use this SwiftXR API. You're free to store the response in your database if you need, but yeah, this is how you use the SwiftXR API. Thank you. If you have any question, do drop it in the comment section or reach out to us on Discord. Thank you.